Welcome to another episode of the Halas Huddle podcast. Here are your hosts, Rob Schwartz and Justin Onayemi, two Bears fans who decided talking into a microphone was better than shouting at their television.
What's up, Halas Huddlers? Huddle up! All right, welcome into episode 33 of the Halas Huddle podcast. As always, myself, Rob Schwartz, joined with me, my good buddy and co-host, Justin Onayemi.
Right. Good to be with you, Rob. It's been a while. We took a little break.
Well, I don't know if it was that we chose to take a little bit of a break, but we had an ice storm that knocked our power out for over 24 hours.
That's true. Man, I already forgot about that.
Yeah, that was a rough one.
That's around when we wanted to record. So, but you know what? There's just a lot of speculation at this point, not a lot of action.
That's right.
I mean, they say the NFL is a 365 type of league. But I would say there's a couple weeks where there's a little lull, and we kind of hit that recently.
A little bit.
But now the combine's happening, so we can talk a little bit about that.
The underwear Olympics.
Exactly. And some of these guys are doing incredible things, but that's not football.
Nope.
You got to keep that in mind.
No, the way I look at it, and I'm going through the draft process right now pretty heavily, coming up with my rankings, going through my tiers, putting in notes on each player. And I do like using the combine to just kind of like justify my thought process. But if I see somebody who like, whoa, that guy was a lot faster than I realized, or wow, that guy was a lot slower than I realized, or maybe not as agile, doing things like a 3-cone drill, then I have to go back to the film, kind of watch to see, okay, did I miss something? That's what this is for. The other part that's important, and very important, in my opinion, are the press conferences and the team interviews, right? And we don't get privileged to actually seeing what those in-house team interviews are. I will say the Chicago Bears are doing something interesting. They have a dartboard and a like mini putt thing in their room that they're like challenging the players to try to find out like their competitive edge.
Right. I heard about that. I didn't know if we were going to talk about it, but I mean, I wonder if it's even which one they choose as part of the evaluation. Like
that could be. Okay, so I was listening to, and I hate plugging other podcasts, but everyone knows that CHGO Chicago is one of the ones that I obviously follow religiously.
I thought we were the only Bears podcast.
We are. Okay. The only good one, right?
Wow. Actually, no. Let's not do that.
But somebody was talking about, and I don't recall who, I apologize, was asking like a question of, if you were a fruit, would you be an orange or an apple? And then like your response to that question was also like the correct answer. But I guess one of them did answer apple. And then I guess they did hint that apple was the correct answer over orange, just because orange is kind of like, it's hard on the outside, but once you pull away that layer, it's kind of like soft on the inside. Yeah.
Yeah, but you drop an apple, it bruises right away and it becomes crappy.
That's true.
Yeah.
Again, I think it's more the response. Like, what's your justification for choosing?
I see.
Right?
How well you can explain yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. So, again, we get right into things on this show, but episode 33.
Yeah.
Some good options here.
Jeremy Langford.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Nice
that's
pull.
Not my guy.
Nice pull. Now I gotta make a correction. So I don't know the Halas Huddlers. I'm guessing the range in how long they've been Bear fans and their recall on certain things.
Yeah.
But on episode 31, I thought I had recalled that there were an 85 Bear wore 31, and I looked into it, and not at all. So I was mistaken. I believe I was confused with Calvin Thomas, who wore 33. And played the smooth sax on the Super Bowl Shuffle.
Okay.
So I don't think this is the Calvin Thomas episode, but I did want to make sure we knew that correction.
To me, there's only one guy.
See, for me, it was tough.
Really?
I know you're thinking Peanut.
I'm thinking Peanut.
But Jalen Johnson. I like.
And
the reason Jalen Johnson comes to mind for me, and this is going to kind of segue into one thing we're going to talk about in today's episode, but this team is not star-studded by any means.
No.
And when, a lot of times hearing talk right now, especially with the draft and the combine, there's this idea of who's a blue chipper, like who's that guy.
In fact, on their draft board, they're color coordinating it, and blue are the top guys.
Exactly. Like that's where that comes from. Like who are your blue chip players? And I mean, do the Bears have any is the question. And his name comes up as a potential for that.
Sure.
And so that's why, if he's the guy on your team that maybe at his position stands out, then he deserves to be our episode. But Peanut Tillman, future Hall of Famer? Question mark.
He is in my eye. The way that the forced fumbles, the way that people talk about a peanut punch. I mean,
even when other teams are playing.
Yeah. I mean, even to this day.
Right.
I mean, to me, that sets him apart. I don't think he's a first ballot. I know we've talked about that's irrelevant.
Are we still hot on that?
I mean, I'm mad still about the Devin Hester stuff. I'm not going to just let that go. But, I think he is a future Hall of Famer. Like, to me, he gets in over like a Lance Briggs. So,
interesting.
Yeah.
I think Briggs definitely filled up the stat sheet a lot more than you might say for Tillman, although Tillman turnover machine, as you mentioned, with the forced fumbles, but also a good number of picks.
Yeah, I mean, and going up against a guy like Randy Moss and Kelvin Johnson, like, to this day, I will never forget being at the game. I don't even remember what year it was, but I can picture him in the corner of the end zone, jump ball to Moss. He comes down with the opposite end of where our seats were, and I'm screaming, he intercepted it. Oh my God. The whole place just went nuts. It was insane. Like,
someone out there is going to need to fact check me on this. And it's not like I'm declaring it a fact, but he's one of the first corners I remember. And maybe I'm just thinking of this locally with the Bears, but I feel like corners were always a little smaller. Like that's one of the ways you knew a corner versus a receiver. Yeah. And he was a 6-footer, and I feel like now you see a lot more corners with that size. And obviously there's a reason. You got to be able to win those jump balls with the likes of Kelvin Johnson and Randy Moss. But for him to just have that size, but still that smoothness, great player. So Hall of Fame, not sure. But great player. So I think he does get the rights to this episode.
I was going to
Charles Tillman episode.
Still the face of this episode. So Charles Tillman, hats off to you.
So on this episode, we teased last time. We went through the offense on our last episode and looked at how many players on the current roster, not including guys who are no longer signed, are projected starters for next season. Yeah. So we'll do that for the defense. But before that, we want to talk about a little bit of like breaking news. Can I start with one?
Yeah, we're a little bit behind on it, but it's still within this week. So
I'll explain why we're behind. Okay, and the viewers need to know this. So if you watched our mock offseason 1.0, there will be others, and in fact, we'll talk about that on this episode. It was one of our bigger episodes. Actually, it was our biggest episode, and so hopefully we see similar when we do the second one. But if you remember, Daron Payne was the guy that both of us really wanted, and the news came out that Washington is going to be franchise tagging him. And so if you're watching on YouTube, I'm not clean shaven. I actually had to reach out to Aaron Rodgers, find out about this retreat, this dark room. And I went in there, man, 4 days just with my thoughts because now we had to move on from Daron Payne. So
I feel like the fact that your power would not probably
that's right.
Put you into that mood, oh man, I should just do this. Let's do this 4 days. It can't be that hard.
That's right. I think Rodgers only made it 2.
Yeah. I heard that he it wasn't what people thought. He still had power and
he just wants the news on him. But no, I truly, listeners, I'm telling the truth here. I didn't feel like shaving, but the Daron Payne thing, man, that really bummed me out. However, now what? We got to move forward.
I'm not for certain, but I do believe he's the only official franchise tag at this point. There's been a bunch of other guys. I think Evan Engram might be another. I've obviously read that that's who they were planning on doing. That's the route that they're taking, but I don't know if it's official yet.
Well, I didn't know that the Payne was official. He signed it?
Well, I don't think he signed it.
Okay. But they've declared that they will be using it on.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Because sometimes that goes south when the guy then hears that and says, well, I won't show up to camp and starts playing hardball with them. So until it's the line is signed.
Well, and you have like I'm blanking on the quarterback in New York.
New York, Daniel Jones.
Yeah, Daniel Jones. Yeah,
Okay.
that's how great he is.
I know, and he's asking for $45 million a year.
Well, and rumors is that they're looking at getting a deal done, and there is a 4 in front of it. So I know you shoot for the moon. I know the quarterback contracts are inflated. I just don't see him as a franchise quarterback.
I know it's not a Giants podcast, but if you sign him to 40-something million and that keeps you from keeping Saquon Barkley, I think that's a mistake.
Here's what I think is going to happen. I think they're going to sign him to 40-some million a year, and they're going to tag Saquon because the tag is going to come in a lot lower than what he's going to
at that position.
I think it's like 10, 11 million than what he's going to dictate in the open market, right? So.
And I'm not saying this about Saquon as a person, but he would be the type that would say, then I'm going to hold out because he knows he's worth more than that on the market.
It's possible.
And would want a long-term deal. But
Josh Jacobs was the other one.
Yes, you're right. I just saw that as well. So, which he came up in our list as well.
Yep.
And, running back, we said if you can get one of those guys that's a clear upgrade, awesome. If not, and you can re-sign Montgomery at a good price, awesome. Or it's a good draft.
This is a good draft.
But so with Daron Payne, our number one target coming off the board, Bears have to shift because I feel like, and we'll talk about this, defensive line needs to be addressed in the draft and in free agency.
So the shift could have been, right? And these are going to kind of blend together. The shift could have been, and I guess still can be, Jalen Carter, right?
See, I don't think you should have brought him up yet. We're going to talk plenty about him.
But, I mean, that's like the first thought, right? Like, oh, okay, well, it was always going to be Daron Payne or Jalen Carter. Like, those were like every Bears fan was like, you either got to get Daron Payne in free agency or you got to get Jalen Carter in the draft. No one really, I won't say no one. A lot of people didn't want anything in between, right? Nothing in between. But there's guys out there. And I'm really high on one of them. I'm, spoiler alert, working on a perfect blueprint off-season article right now for Bear Goggles On. So check that out. It should be coming out tomorrow or maybe Sunday if I can't get it done tonight because I'll be editing for this. And I'm going to spoiler alert it, but Dre'Mont Jones is rumored to, well, not rumored. He's going to be testing the free agency market. The reports are is he wants somewhere between 60 and 70 million. And I'm giving it to him. 70 million, sign me up. 4 years, 70 million, 17.5 per year. That puts him 7th amongst the defensive tackles prior to whatever happens this offseason.
I think I know the other guy you're going to say.
Yeah, maybe.
And he's considerably younger is one of the things about Dre'Mont Jones that's attractive. Is he 26, 27?
He is 26, coming off his rookie deal. Okay. I don't think you do know who I was going to say.
Okay, then I don't because this is a very common name.
So Javon Hargrave.
Hargrave.
So that's not where I was going.
Yep.
So the reason I'm saying not Javon Hargrave is there's rumors that he might be the guy that the Eagles tag, which is interesting because he's older. I don't know if they're just like, let's just tag him, keep him one more year, and then put him out to pasture. But because they also have like Chauncey Gardner, like they have a lot of guys that.
Right,
are kind of up there in age, but then some
Fletcher
of these younger
Cox,
guys.
He's a free agent now too.
I mean,
they're gonna move on.
I think you're gonna move on, or he'll come back and sign. Right.
True. I mean, he's very attached to that team.
Yes.
All right. So, could you be talking Dalvin Tomlinson?
Dalvin Tomlinson was not where I was going with it, but definitely another option.
Could you be talking Ogunjobi?
No.
Or are there hard feelings there?
No, I don't think Ogunjobi's coming back.
All right. I don't think I got anyone then. Who's the guy?
Poona Ford out of Seattle. So here's the reason why I don't think they go with Poona Ford, but I like him. Is that he's not lengthy enough for them. If I recall, he's 6 foot and like 310, 315 pounds. So he doesn't have the length. We've heard Matt Eberflus talk about he described his defensive linemen. He wants them big, long, and fast.
This is the explicit version,
it
so
is.
I guess we're okay.
It is. But now, I didn't say hard. I said fast. So
that's normally not the desirable trait.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Now, Dre'Mont Jones, is he an end, or can you move him in, or can he do both?
He's both. He's versatile, and he's played both positions for Denver. He's coming off a career year where he did play in both spots, but a lot of his plays came from the inside. 6.5 tackles was his career year. I want to say, this is all off the top of my head, 2 forced fumbles. He had 10 quarterback hits and 9 tackles for loss, or maybe I have those flipped. But every year, and he only played 13 games this year. So those are some solid stats from your interior line.
So let me ask you another question. So there was a comment, and I wish I had listened to it. I only read it and then other people's interpretations of it. So you probably actually heard it, so I'd love to hear your interpretation.
Maybe.
But something Poles said about the timing of a potential deal for the number 1 pick.
I did hear this.
Being before free agency, and people, and this is where I want to get clarification. I don't know if he was explicit in this or people are reading into that trade for the number 1 pick could involve a player is what he meant by that. That's not how I interpret it, by the way. So I interpret it as knowing what your return is helps you plan for how you would be able to target the draft. They have 1 and 54 right now. So if they can't trade that, my guess is, well, I wouldn't have said this a week ago, but if you can't trade 1, Will Anderson is your pick.
Easy.
And you probably don't pick it until 54 unless you're giving up future capital.
Correct.
Which is not ideal for the situation they're in.
No.
But when he said that, I didn't interpret that as a player's coming back. I interpreted it as, okay, now we know what picks we're getting, and we can plan for what we can do with that and what we need to do in free agency.
So you probably read the initial quote, and there was more of like a follow-up where he had gone into a little bit more of detail on how, like, what type of scenarios would be good trading it. And he talked, like, he didn't go out there and say, look, we're going to try to trade this now. We're going to try and trade this on draft day. Like he said, we're looking at all scenarios. We're looking at all options. We're doing our due diligence. And he did mention that one of the benefits of doing a trade prior to the draft is that it could include a player.
So the reason I bring that up, and specifically in the context of, hey, we wanted Daron Payne, is DeForest Buckner.
Yeah.
Played with Eberflus. Obviously would be a huge upgrade to anything they have right now. Yeah. However, in my analysis of this, you're getting a lot less for that trade if you're taking on a DeForest Buckner. You probably get a pick and him, or
you're going to get the
2
swap.
Picks and him. The swap.
You'll get the swap
and a pick,
and
maybe?
Buckner, probably.
Okay. Which isn't terrible.
Maybe the swap their third, Buckner in a 2024 third, 2024 second.
Well, and then you think, okay, without Buckner, do they throw in, let's say, a first next year or something like that?
Yeah.
But is he better than a first next year? Probably.
I mean, it depends because you don't know where that first is going to be. But we've talked about it. It's, maybe 50% of your first round picks hit.
True.
As blue chip players, right?
And he is a blue chip player
already, right?
Exactly.
I mean, he's a little
known,
bit
and you're going to pay him a hell of a lot more than you pay that pick.
Right. He's a little bit older. I still think ideally I would try to trade back and obtain draft capital and build through the draft, but I would definitely not hate bringing in DeForest Buckner. And the thing that sucks, and I know I mentioned him already, got a little bit ahead of it, but the Jalen Carter situation, and we're not going to talk about that quite yet, but
I think it is the time.
Okay, we have to.
Well, the reason we both said Will Anderson would be your pick is right. Jalen Carter, in our eyes, I'm assuming, has removed himself. He's put enough doubt in your mind that you can't, especially at 1, take him. And it does something else that I'd like to talk about, but I want to hear your initial take first.
So I am already on record that I would not touch him before the top 15 picks. I think after 15, and I hate saying this because I feel like I'm a morally high ground, I don't know, type person. He is 21. And if this was a one-time incident, I think I would be more likely to give him a pass. But this isn't a first-time incident. There was already talks of red flags. He has had speeding issues prior to this. I think my issue is that at some point in the draft, talent outweighs the risk of taking on that off the field stuff, right? And we've seen Ryan Poles willing to do it. Byron Pringle stayed on this team after like his little donut incident, right? Who was the other one? There was another receiver that got into some type of off the field altercation over the off season and still stuck around, and I can't recall who it is. But here nor there. Before we get into it, let me just break down what happened here. So I'm sure everyone knows by now. If you haven't, you must not be following the draft and the NFL Combine process very closely. But after the national championship game, there was a horrible car crash. 2 people died. The driver was actually a woman. She was 24. She was a recruiting staffer for University of Georgia. And she was the driver. She had a 1.37. Don't quote me on this. I think it was 0.137. I'm sorry. So almost double, right? The blood alcohol
I don't
level
know there, but okay.
I've read that it's almost double, and they crashed, and both of them passed away. Unfortunately, it's a horrible, tragic accident. The other one was a teammate of Jalen Carter's, also obviously on Georgia. Now come to find out that they were not just driving, they were drag racing, and Jalen Carter was in the driver's seat of the other car. And is it his fault that they died? I can't say no, but I can't say yes. I mean, who knows what they would have done? She was clearly intoxicated. I know that I've driven over 100 miles an hour speeding fast on the expressway when I was in my 20s. So I kind of see the fun of it. They are saying that he was not intoxicated, Jalen Carter. I don't know if that's now the police trying to cover this up at this point, but unfortunately it's all speculation. We kind of have to wait and see how the cards fall. But I personally, I would not take him in the top 15 picks.
So when you say a person who has like red flags, typically it's not worth it earlier in the draft.
Right.
Is that also because of who picks earlier? Like the team I hear wouldn't mind possibly taking him might be your Pittsburgh Steelers.
Oh, that's not who I was thinking.
Well, my point is, if he goes to an established team with a coach that's established, that has a program,
George Pickens.
You talk about the Patriots, you talk about the Steelers, those types of teams, that's different than coming to what the Bears have, where there's so much in flux. They're a new regime. They don't have the infrastructure to be like, this is the way, this is the Bears way. These are the leaders that you're going to look up to. Right. They don't have any of that. And I think if you're picking in the first half of the draft, typically, now, obviously there are trades, there are teams that were playoff teams that are or near playoff that might pick early, but typically, and that's also why some of these like highly, highly touted guys don't pan out. You go to a crap team and a crap organization. Yeah. But I think in the second part of the round, you might have a team that can take that risk and would take that risk. But I don't think the Bears are. But what it meant for me is in all these different mocks that I've done or been watching, there's this idea. First of all, we all pretty much want them to trade the pick. Yes. Okay. Now, there are dreams where they trade twice. And there are dreams where they trade twice and still get either Will Anderson or Jalen Carter.
That's right.
But if Carter now has taken himself out of the equation, which if I'm the GM, he has, for the reason I just explained, you don't have the team that can necessarily, and I don't want to say keep him in check, but give him what he might need. It makes me think you can trade further back now. And the reason that might be good is the type of future assets that you might be able to get. And yes, if you trade all the way back to 7, all the way back to 9, you're not getting Will Anderson. However, I'm really liking some of the other defensive linemen you're seeing. Yeah. Whether that's Tyree Wilson, whether that's Miles Murphy. And so Carter has now made me think, okay, a further trade back is possible, in which case you don't get that top end guy, but you might get more in terms of picks and more in terms of the future picks, even for like a future first rounder in 2024, 2025.
I love Will Anderson, but you are right on with my thought process of this whole thing. I've always been in the mindset of trading back. First of all, I got to get this out there. anyone who thinks Houston's giving up the second round pick or the second overall pick and the 12th overall pick, please stop, because it's not happening. And I fear that too many Bears fans out there are getting like these crazy ideas that this is going to like be a thing. And I've seen it even with certain like other bloggers. I've even heard some meatball takes from analysts thinking that it could be a possibility. If you go off precedent and you look at the way that the charts flow, it's not happening that way. Now, maybe if Chicago gets something else back in return, like a higher, 2023 or 2024 pick or something. Yeah, then it's maybe possible. But literally 2 and 12 for one, not happening. Please stop.
Okay, now let me ask you though. Seattle, 5 and 20 for one.
That's more realistic.
And
much more realistic.
This would be with Geno Smith as a free agent.
Yeah.
I mean, whether they decide to bring him back or not, they can't necessarily think he's totally their future. And so Carroll comes out and says, we wouldn't be opposed to moving up for the right, situation.
Yeah.
5 and 20, I'm thinking about that.
That for sure is in the cards.
And 5 and 20, 5 and 20. Now, I can't that much imagine Will Anderson making it to 5. But my goodness, if you get him at 5 and you have 20.
The only way that happens is if it's literally 4 quarterbacks go 1 through 4.
Which could happen.
Highly unlikely, but possible.
Very possible. The only thing you would need is Arizona trading out.
Yes.
Which, why wouldn't they?
They're a shit show. They need to also.
So, all right. Well, we kind of covered both the big news stories that we wanted to talk about, with Daron Payne coming off of the wish list of the Bears for free agency, which you and I for sure, but that was pretty much everyone's had him on their list.
Yeah.
Including, I'm sure, polls.
Yes. Oh, for sure.
And then talking about Jalen Carter and what's going on with him and how that might impact the Bears' outlook at the draft.
Yeah, we're going to have a lot more draft talk coming up in our next mock offseason 2.0.
Absolutely.
And
so,
I can't wait for that one because I've been doing a lot of draft research.
That'll be awesome. And I don't know, you want to talk about that now or later, how we might do that episode?
Yeah, so you're going to notice that we have now switched over to StreamYard. I hope that this recording is going well. I did one test. It was perfect. So if this one doesn't go well, I'm going to be pissed.
You have to read lips.
It's going to be Rob's rants about the recording not working. No, but we are going to attempt, and hopefully it all goes well, our first live stream broadcast on YouTube where we do our mock season 2.0. I hope everyone can join in. We'll be taking some chat questions if possible, as long as they're pertaining to what we're going through. I mean, we'll obviously try to go back, and touch base on things that are asked, but yeah, it's going to be a fun episode. The first one was fantastic. It might run a little bit long again, but
yeah, I mean, that'll be awesome. And assuming it goes well, live streaming is something we talked about doing next season as well.
Yeah.
So just fun to try new things on the Halas Huddle. So we're looking forward to that. But I think right now we'll take a break.
I think some ads are due.
And then we'll come back and segue into who are the defensive starters on this roster.
We'll huddle up for round 2.
All right. Welcome back, Halas Huddlers, to the second half. Huddle up! So we are going to now look at the current roster and say how many starters on the defense there are. And obviously, wherever they're lacking, they're going to need to address that either through free agency or the draft. We'll speculate, and I mean, I'm giving a little bit of my answer away here, but they're going to need to do it in both, I think, for the way we see this playing out. But
I think the defense is a little bit better than the offense currently, but not by much.
Not by much. Maybe.
From a starter standpoint.
I don't know. How many? So let's quickly review then. What did we have last time for how many? I think we ended up with 5 starters on offense.
Yeah, we had Fields, Komet, Braxton Jones, Tevin Jenkins,
Mooney, Claypool.
Oh, yeah, because we counted 3. So 6.
Okay. Out of your 11.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think I'm wrong now.
It might be a tie.
We'll see.
Okay. Well, we better do it, and that's how we'll find out. So how do you want to do it, man?
All right. I'm going to start. We're going to start in the trenches, and we're going to work our way back, and we'll go defensive tackle, defensive end, linebacker, corner, safety.
Perfect. All right. Let's do it.
All right. So currently, right now, we got defensive tackle. We got Justin Jones. We got Jalen Holmes.
Oh, I thought we had Jalen Carter.
No, not yet.
Dang.
And Andrew Brown. So Blackson is now gone. Pennell is now gone. And Armand Watts is now gone. Now, you could bring some of those guys back.
Okay.
But out of those guys,
okay,
what do you got?
So I don't know if we're going to agree on this, Rob. And it's more so I see that whole unit of the defensive line as a big, big mess. I mean, they generated the least pressure and the fewest sacks of, I think, any team in the NFL as a unit. So that makes me want to say there are no returning starters. However,
by the way, 50 sacks less than the leading team in the NFL who had 70.
Well, and that's just total sacks.
Yes.
I'm talking about from the defensive line.
Yeah.
Which, I mean,
none of them led the team.
Yeah. Like Brisker, I think, tied for the lead with a linebacker.
With Roquan Smith,
dude,
who
this
left
is getting ugly.
In November?
Yeah.
October?
Sad. So, but if you even, it's even worse when you look at the line. So it would be easy to say that there are no starters. However, I did think Justin Jones showed enough last season, and it's hard to replace all four guys on a defensive line in one offseason. So I'm going to say Justin Jones is a starter for next year on the D-line.
So I am going to say that Justin Jones is not my starter. I do want him here. I think he's part of the rotational depth. I think he would make an awesome second 3-tech. But I want my 3-tech because it's just too important for me for the Matt Eberflus system. I will give him the opportunity, and he did it in Los Angeles, to not play the 3-tech and play the nose.
Congrats on not saying San Diego, by the way.
Yeah.
I could see it. Like the gears were shifting there.
If he's willing to do that and I can't find a better replacement there, I'm more than willing to then give him that starting role. So I'll give him a half.
I was just about to say he's a half because last time on the offense, we agreed on everything.
We did.
Which I don't know if the viewers, we don't talk about these things ahead of time, and I don't know if they think that's lame that we had the same opinion. We don't always agree. And
no.
When we disagree, we'll talk it out.
We should have seen our text messages on draft night last year because did not agree at all.
Oh, and I think we'll be talking about it for years to come. George Pickens. I noticed you threw him into this episode. How many of our 33 episodes, although I've only been a part of, I think, 25, and you missed 2 of those. So, we've only done, 23 episodes together, and I guess he's been mentioned in, 20 of them?
So, Jeremy and I were very high on George Pickens, so he was brought up a lot early in the show.
So, 8 out of 8 when you guys did it.
Yeah.
And then maybe 20 out of 23 with me, so.
But you mentioned Pittsburgh, and you mentioned red flags, and that's the reason why he dropped. So,
it was justified this time. It was justified this time.
It was a
but sometimes you just throw it in we're doing that word analogy game. And
which, by the way, we'll get back to the Bears for a second. The team I don't think would pass up on Jalen Carter, the Cleveland Browns. Because if they're going to give Deshaun Watson the type of contract that just screws the entire league from a quarterback standpoint, that's the reason why Lamar Jackson hasn't signed back with the Ravens at this point.
True. So, and I know we're kind of shifting. We're going back and forth. But not all red flags are equal. Mm-hmm. I mean, Randy Moss fell in the draft because he smoked weed. Was that Warren Sapp too? Or Warren Sapp had a little more to it?
I think Warren Sapp had a little bit more to it, but Randy
maybe
Moss
closer to what we're talking about with Jalen Carter.
Yeah.
That's a
Laramie Tunsil dropped to 13 because of a gas mask.
Well, there was stuff in the gas mask.
That's the right way to do it.
I don't know. I mean, it led to people dying. But anyway.
That's the problem, right?
I mean,
but this isn't like a Henry Ruggs situation, right? Like, he literally drank, drove, and he was the cause of someone dying. Indirectly, Carter was involved, but I can't give him full credit.
Well, you didn't talk about fleeing the scene, and
he did. He fled and lied to the police.
Right. Anyway, we're getting off track. I didn't want it to be in depth about that. You went more in depth than I thought.
Well, he's a defensive tackle. We're talking defensive tackles.
And I said, I thought we had Carter. So we got half of a starter in the DTs.
That's a good start. Half a starter with the first group of guys, right? All right. Defensive ends. We got Travis Gibson, Dominique Robinson, Terrell Lewis, Andre Anthony. Yeah. Honestly,
don't even say anymore.
Yeah.
So who do you got?
I have 0. In fact, I'm cutting Travis Gibson. I apologize. I like you. I thought you had a lot of potential. I think you'd be better suited as an outside linebacker. I think you'd be better suited on another team. So please find a better opportunity, and I wish you all the support and luck for your future.
Now, let me ask you, sorry to interrupt, but if they cut him, what is the monetary gain of that?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I believe
is it significant is what I'm asking.
It's got to be $1 million or $2 million.
So to me, I don't think that's significant enough that I'm cutting him, just based on the fact that there's not the cupboard is bare, as you just kind of showed us.
It is.
And I don't want him to be one of your starters, but again, depending on how this all shakes out, would I put him in there? Possibly. So I'd almost make him another half, because you can't have half when it's all said and done. So if we have a half and a half, at most they got one starter on the D-line.
Dominique Robinson's my half.
Okay.
Right? Because he showed flashes early. Cannot contain, but I'm hoping
in an off
he's
going to
learn, right?
Okay.
And I think if you're not starting and you're just coming in on third down and you're gunning for the quarterback and that's like your only job, you're probably not going to get as exposed as he was this year, right?
So are you counting like a third down specialist as a starter? Kind of how we said there's no
fullback.
Like,
what was that, Mark Anderson, right?
Yeah.
He's a third down specialist, 12 sacks.
But are you counting that as like a starting position?
No. That's why I'm giving him half.
I see. Okay.
So we have a full starter.
We have a full starter on the D-line, but we might have 0.
2 halves.
2 halves might equal a whole, or it might equal 0.
It might, but
okay. But it's sad.
The good thing is that this is a very deep draft class for defensive end. So if you land a defensive tackle in free agency, or even double dip and go defensive tackle in free agency and another one in the draft, this is why I think he needs to trade down. And again, he can't make other teams want to trade up. But if he can get a haul, gets 2 more picks inside that top 50 or even top 75, one of those is a defensive end, one of those is a defensive tackle that you can count on, then you got something.
All right. Let me just ask, because it's in our minds. You stay at 1 and pick Will Anderson, or you trade down and get Will Anderson. I mean, he's an immediate starter, but how would he impact the answer to these questions? Like now, if you have him on one side, is Travis Gibson fine to go? But I don't know. As a rookie, I mean, I'm hearing compared to Bosa. I'm hearing compared to Khalil Mack. I'm hearing Micah Parsons. I'm hearing who else? DeMarcus Ware. Yeah. Now, granted, that's all speculation. That's all whatever. But if he's anything like any of those people we just named, you're a force, and you make everyone else next to you that much better.
Yeah, you figure you get Will Anderson. I'm going to keep throwing Dre'Mont Jones out there because that's my guy. On the inside, you got Justin Jones as your nose. I mean, you got something there.
It sounds like a law firm or something. Jones, and Anderson.
The problem, though, is then if you have, Dominique Robinson on the other side, then you just run that direction every time.
But he's getting all one-on-ones.
True.
And if they become that predictable, I hope.
So Will Anderson's really good at getting to the quarterback, but he's also really good run
he's
stopper.
He's an all-around player.
Right?
You're right.
Dre'Mont Jones is good at both. My issue is Justin Jones struggles a little bit. He's a little bit smaller if he was your nose. Like I worry he might struggle as the nose and in the run game. And then you got Dominique Robinson who can't contain on the other side. So
go ahead.
I'm also bringing in a guy like, well, I can't say Ngakwe because he's awful against the run too. But you bring in another defensive end in free agency too, right? Like that's
yes, of course. Well, what I was going to say is you want that nose to be a run stuffer so that they don't get to the next level.
Right.
And we're about to go to the next level, and I don't think it gets much, much better than what we just discussed for the D-line.
Hall of Famer.
Well, we do. We have one Hall of Famer, and then we got,
Famer.
I don't think, a whole lot else. But actually, just real quick, before we go to linebacker, I believe when you said it's a deep draft at that position, you were referring to outside edge rushers. Yeah. But I feel like there's a lot of DTs as well.
There's a decent amount. Yeah, not all of them are 3 techniques,
but
there's a decent amount. Yeah, I only have 2 with the first round grade, but there's a lot that are second and third rounders.
So I just want to point out, at this time of year and the excitement of having the number 1 pick, so many people's focus is on the first round.
Yes.
The second round, the third round, the fourth round matter.
Yes.
And Bears, even in the Ryan Pace days, have been okay at picking those mid-round guys. Yes. So you're going to need to fill this roster out in a lot of ways. So I'm hoping they're addressing D-line, whether that's end, interior, or both in this draft and in free agency. They got to, because we have half and half
They have 8 picks. Last year they had 5, ended with 11. They have 8. I need them to hit at least 12.
Okay.
I want at least 12 picks
Okay.
by the end of the day.
All right. Sounds good. So linebackers.
Linebackers. Nicholas Morrow is a free agent. Joe Thomas is a free agent. Matt Adams is a free agent. So you got Sterling Weatherford. You got Javon White, DeMarcus Gates, and you got Jack Sanborn. I mean, Sand God. I mean, Sanborn. I'm sorry.
So this is quick and easy. You have one starter. I mean, I follow the Bears, man. I do a Bears podcast, and I barely know the names you just said. And Jack Sanborn was an undrafted free agent last season.
Yeah.
So this is a big project that is ahead of Ryan Poles and Ian Cunningham.
Yeah.
To me, you have Jack Sanborn as a starter, and you got nothing else.
Yep. Yeah.
Now, linebacker in free agency. Who am I thinking?
Well, you got TJ Edwards if you want to reunite the Wisconsin guys. Okay. An undrafted free agent.
Okay.
Who was with the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't know if he's going to re-sign there or not. Oh God, I'm blanking.
Okereke from
Okereke from
the Colts.
The Colts.
And again, there's an Eberflus connection.
Yes. Although the Eberflus connections didn't work this year.
They didn't work, but I think in year one, are you bringing them in just to even buy into hits and buy into all that?
That's
and
exactly.
I don't know what they did in the meeting rooms,
right.
But they didn't show up on the field.
No.
But year two should look a lot different on the field.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah, there's guys.
But
Anthony
you're gonna need to
Hitchens,
do
who's
both.
got a connection too.
That's another one where both is going to be the answer, though.
Right.
It's got to be a free agent focus, and it's got to be a
I
draft
would love
focus.
Jack Campbell, but oh my gosh. And I know I'm not trying to talk draft, but we're in the middle of the combine, but he just blew himself into top of the second second round, maybe even bottom of the first round territory as an inside linebacker. Like, just outstanding numbers at the combine. And I am not a big let's change what we think of the combine, but he was already one of my top linebackers anyway. So, yeah.
Okay. So what do we got? United on one. So on the D line and linebacker, we might have 2 starters.
2. And
if both halves actually end up starting, you have 3. But that's still horrible.
Awful.
Luckily, the better news is ahead.
Yeah, and here's the good news is that we're going to go to corner and we're going to go to safety. And 2 of those guys were rookies last year.
Excellent point.
So,
and now remember last week when we did offense, or it wasn't last week, but last episode when we did offense, we joked around about Blasingame, who's actually not on the roster.
Yeah.
But regardless, even if he was, we don't truly feel fullback is a starting position. This is a league where throwing is the new, that's what people do. And so we said there are really 3 starting receivers.
Yeah.
The corner is the same thing.
And there's really 2 starting linebackers.
True.
Because
so
if you're in nickel,
we're halfway there then.
Yeah.
So for the sake of argument, we have 3 spots to fill at corner. How many of them do you think are on the roster as starters?
2.
I agree with that. And I think where we might disagree, corner, there's some good ones in the draft.
Yeah.
Let's say rounds 1 and 2, or rounds 1, 2, and 3, you're getting a corner.
Yeah. And
if you get a guy who you feel good about, it's going to depend on what his profile is. But the question is, we didn't say who our 2 are. Obviously, Jalen Johnson, and I think Kyler Gordon. But do you want Gordon inside or out?
So it depends on what you do. But if you go...
I want him on the outside, just so you know.
I think he was better on the outside.
Okay, we agree. I didn't know if we would agree on that. Inside's harder to learn, I think, as a rookie.
Yeah.
And it's going to depend on who you're bringing in. And there's free agents that are possibilities as well. But you have 2 out of the 3 starters. But if you're a good team, you need 3 good corners.
Yes.
And the people they have who aren't starters, unlike D-line and linebacker, there is some depth there that I don't mind. I just don't think those are starters.
Right.
So
I apologize.
What are you looking for?
I had a name in my mind and I can't think of what it is.
In the draft or?
No, in free agency.
Free agency? Yassine?
Yeah, who has a connection to Matt Eberflus.
Which you just said matters not at all.
It doesn't.
No, they have another guy who they're possibly going to give up.
But he's
on.
more of an outside guy though too.
I can't remember his name, but he's the second. Like it's something the second, and he was a Pro Bowler 2 years ago. But when Eberflus left, he dropped off, and they said it's the
It wasn't
scheme.
Kenny Moore, right?
Kenny Moore.
Oh,
is he
did
more?
he have
the
a
second?
bad year?
Yeah.
Did he?
Kenny Moore the second might be a
Because he's
cap
a nickel.
casualty.
Because he's a
Right.
nickel.
And then you move Gordon to the outside, and you have a fearful threesome, I think.
I'd be very happy with that.
So there's options. At least you're only one away. Unlike on D-line, where you pretty
Right.
much have to blow the whole thing up.
Right.
We feel good about corner, and I think we feel even better about safety.
And I do think with free agency is where you're going to go to find your third starter.
Right.
Because you addressed it already in the draft early last year. You
And-
might find some depth.
Yeah,
obviously.
exactly. And if you draft a guy you like, he can
Right.
be a rotational player.
Yeah.
Safeties.
So the other rookie, Jaquan Brisker, is definitely a starter. Led the team in sacks, as we mentioned.
I think this one's easy, but then I realize it's not quite as easy because the other guy's name comes up as a cap casualty.
Yeah, so Eddie Jackson, I have said, like, could be a cap casualty. I've also said I would trade him before he's a cap casualty. But Ryan Poles has declared him to be here, in my opinion. The way he spoke about him after the offseason and again recently, I think Eddie Jackson is your starting free safety.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to that conversation we said about who are your blue chippers.
Yeah,
Like
he's one of the
you
only
don't have
ones.
very many, and so if you have a guy that could even be in that conversation, most likely you're going to want to hold on to him. And so I think they have both their safeties in Eddie Jackson and Brisker.
But that's
Now
not bad.
there's not quite as much depth behind safety as there is behind corner.
Yeah, but that's 4 out of 5
4 out of 5 starters.
in your backfield. And we didn't even mention, right? Kendall Vildor,
Yep.
right? He's still
Fringe.
on
He's
contract,
fringe.
right?
Mhm.
Joshua Blackwell had a really good
Yes, he
end of the
did.
year. Like, I'm keeping him around. Elijah Hicks is free safety. Jalen Jones was
So
in.
it's already, I would say, the strength of their current defense.
Yes.
But knowing how bad the D-line was and the secondary was still okay,
Yeah.
imagine if you get something at
Some
D-line.
pressure.
Right, some pressure. The guy has to throw it a little quicker. You don't have to cover as long.
Yeah.
You could see a big upgrade for guys like Brisker, guys like Gordon, and Jalen Johnson. Although I think Jalen Johnson's one of those weird, like it's an enigma because he puts up impressive numbers just by not even getting targeted.
Yeah, he's
Which
not
I
a
didn't
big
know if that was
interception guy.
If that was a comment towards the people on the other side of him.
Oh, yeah, it could be.
So
Are you re-signing him? Are you signing him to an extension now, or are you going to wait and see how he plays?
I think
We're jumping the gun to our offseason.
Well, I think it's going to be hard to spend as much money as they have in free agency, and so some of that should go to re-signing guys. And we keep coming back to it. He's one of your only bright spots.
Yeah.
So I would sign him ahead of time. I wouldn't wait too long. Not saying he doesn't have enough backing to kind of like be one of those holdout type of guys,
right.
like kind of how that Roquan did them.
Yeah.
But I still think you lock him up. I mean, who else are you going to throw it into? We talk about Komet, maybe Mooney, but after those two names, he's it to me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
All right. So if we total that up, we think we have 4 out of 5 on the defensive backfield, 1 out of 2 at linebacker. If we're going to count the 5th defensive back, we're going to take away from linebacker.
Yeah, so we're up to 5.
So we're up to 5, and then maybe 1 more, but it's 2 halves on D-line. So we said 6 on offense, 6 on defense.
It's a tie.
But it's a generous 6.
It is.
So, meaning the other way to flip that around is you need 5 starters on both sides of the ball.
10 starters. Wow.
But
And maybe a kicker.
yeah, true. We didn't do special teams. Here's the thing. That's crazy. That's a lot, and it probably means your team's not going to the Super Bowl next year.
Nope.
However, needing 10 starters and having the most cap space in the league, those go well together.
Yeah.
As opposed to there are teams negative in cap space.
Yeah.
And maybe you as the Bears will benefit from some of those cuts. And if you do, you're bringing in starters.
Although I still think that the cap is like an enigma. It's like not even like real. Like teams just get out of it. It's bullshit.
Yeah, but
Like the Saints they were like negative 60 million like a few weeks ago, and it's like they'll find a way to be positive 20 million before like the end of free agency.
Okay, positive 20.
Sure. I mean, you have less to work with, but it's also at the same time, it's like, and that's where obviously Ryan Pace was learning from, and he kind of screwed us with that approach, but at the same time, there's just so many ways to work the cap that you can just make it. Like, I keep preaching, yes, they have 99 million, and like the closest one, like, and it was like 118 when we were talking about it, but like, I think the Falcons are not second anymore.
Giants?
I was gonna say it was a different team. I was gonna say the Panthers, but Giants might be it. But either way, whoever's second, like there's still a significant difference between them. But at the same time, like
restructure deals, cutting guys.
Yeah, and Chicago's not going to just spend all their money this year. Like they have to be smart about it. Right. And honestly, the way that the way I heard Ryan Poles talk about it, I picked up on we're going to be strategic. We're not going to throw our money at everybody. We're not going to go out and get, the top guy. It sounded just like he did last year. We're going to look more for like the second wave of the first wave, and we're going to look at the second wave of and focus more on the draft. I mean, this team is not going to be a Super Bowl contender this year. It's not. I think 2024 is more realistic.
Yeah, I mean, just even being in the playoff conversation,
that's all you need,
would be nice. And I think they're going to get some help because you look at their division, you like where Detroit's at, but I don't think Green Bay's arrow is pointing up, and Minnesota had a lot of luck this year. I'm not saying it was all luck, and they're a good team, and they'll be a good team next year, but
they were the opposite of Chicago.
They're probably leveling off, and when you look at the 11-1 record in one-score games, that doesn't sustain, I don't think. So basically, you're in the hunt in your division. If you get this team in a position to even be in the hunt in your division, that's success.
Yeah, Chicago was like 1-8 in one-score games.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think that's it for this episode, but we're really excited about what's coming, and it's almost like many times in this episode, we already started to want to go towards, what is this offseason actually going to look like?
Yeah.
We're going to do our mock 2.0, and we're going to do that as a live stream where you, the Halas Huddle listeners, can make comments, can be in our own heads a little bit, and I think it'll be a fun episode.
Speaking of Halas Huddle comments, please like the episode. Please share the episode. You got a Bears fan, friends, share it. Make sure to leave comments in there. I always comment back, always have conversations. I do want to ask, because I had someone respond in one of our prior episodes that I responded back to, but I haven't gotten a response back from. They had mentioned something about not really liking our intro, and I don't know the way it was worded. I wasn't sure if they were referring to the intro where we have the voiceover, talking about how, we're two guys who decided talking into a microphone was better than screaming at their televisions, or if they were referring to the huddle up thing that we had just started. So please, I've seen a couple people say they like the huddle up. I don't know if anyone's ever actually commented about the intro. If you guys don't like the intro, I'll make a new one.
Can I just say something, though? I'm not trying to out you or nothing, but he still yells at the TV, guys.
I do.
He still yells at the TV.
I do.
But at least you get to also talk to the listeners.
I get to vent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get your rants in and everything. If I had more time, I was thinking of doing a This Just In, because Daron Payne is out of the equation, and maybe looking at comparing two players. I was thinking Hargrave and Dre'Mont Jones as who would you take, and break it down.
Yeah.
Didn't get around to it. Maybe that's a future episode. So in addition to doing a 2.0 mock draft, coming up in the future, we talked about maybe going through the positional groups a little more in depth. Because what we did there was just like an overview of it, but really diving into the weeds on how are you going to do this?
Fix the Bears. And granted, it didn't work out in our favor because 3 of those guys are off the table. But we fixed the Bears in an hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah. Not that hard.
No, come on, Ryan Poles, Ian Cunningham. Get to work.
It's so easy to decide on these money contracts, too, when it's not at all your money.
Yeah.
Although people last time did say we were a little off on our AAV.
Yeah, the Elton Jenkins one. I think I said you read that, I think, somewhere.
We're going off of. I mean, we're going to try to do that, but maybe we'll shade up a bit. And hey, it's going to be live, so if people want to make comments on if they think those are fair values, that's the kind of input we can adjust.
And I think it's also fair to us that we also took what the average was for the full contract. But that's not how the cap hits are.
Well,
you can backload it, front load it,
and that's why it doesn't matter what you say or do, because
Right.
you were just saying the 100 million. Is it really 100 million? It could be 110. It could be 94. It could be. So we'll talk about that as we go. But it's fun to do, and hopefully it's fun to listen to.
And I forgot to hit the subscribe button.
Absolutely, we want to keep our subscribers going up, and maybe next week that'll be a big opportunity.
And maybe next week we might have an announcement that could lead to an influx of many more subscribers.
Oh, wow. Teaser.
Yeah.
All right. I like it. All right. Huddle up.
Well,
Bear down.
break.
All right.
Bear down.
We didn't rehearse.
No.